one of the foundational work on corporate social responsibility, because that's what we're talking about, dates from 1953, and it's a book by Howard Bowen that's called The Social Responsibilities of the Businessman. It doesn't mean that there was no social responsibility before, but it's considered to be the first book that outlines what would be the social responsibility, and therefore later built on what would be the corporate social responsibility. Howard Bowen was an academic, with an economist from the US with a background in policy and in the corporate world, but also in academia, where he operated as a leader of institutions and also as a professor. And he was asked to write that book partly by a group of Protestant and Orthodox churches. The idea was partly a reaction from the position that had come from the Catholic Church, that had clarified its social doctrine related partly to corporations and worker at the end of the 19th century. I'm not going to go into details, but the Catholic Church had clarified its position, and it was gaining influence because it had a clear social doctrine. So the Protestant churches and the Orthodox churches wanted to also have their own statements, and they asked Howard Bowen to make it, partly supported by the Rockefeller Foundation. So what does that doctrine say? So one of the first thing that is stated by Howard Bowen in the introduction is that the decisions and actions of the businessman have direct bearing on the quality of our lives and personality. Basically, what Bowen is stating is that with the growing importance of the corporation in capitalist society, and remember, we are in the post-Second World War era, so really the roaring 30s and this apogee of industrial capitalism. And the idea was that the decisions that are made by executives go far beyond just their employees and the companies and their shareholders, but influence everyone around them. So the consequences are, as he described, far-reaching. And therefore, the questions of what is the morality, what is the logic, what is the ethics, and what are their responsibilities becomes extremely important. As he phrases it, are businessmen, by virtue of their strategic position and their considerable decision-making power, obligated to consider social consequences when making their private decisions? And the answer for Bowen is obviously yes, because they have such an influence beyond the frontier of their corporation. They need to have a sense of social responsibility. What it is, what it's based on, and what's the system of accountability is something to be clarified. But the first statement of Bowen is that, yes, there is a social responsibility beyond the limits of the organization. But then what is the morality of these corporate decisions? What are the frameworks that are behind it? So that opens Bowen to a lot of questions that remain extremely relevant today. The one that I want you to think about is the question in the middle. What are the criteria by which the decisions of businessmen should be judged? Bowen offers his own answer to that question, but it will later be challenged, and other people will provide other criteria and other framework. This is not a closed debate. There's still very much things to think about and debate about in that area. But already in 1953, Bowen was bringing it to our attention. The way that he phrases the legitimacy of his approach is very interesting, in the sense that he says that the only way that we can rationalize the freedom that we give to decision maker, to leaders of enterprise in a free system, a free enterprise system, can only be justified if we ask them to take into account more than just what is good for them and their owners, but also what is good for, as you say, our entire society. And that's a very interesting way of framing the argument. It's not to say, let's start with the given fact that entrepreneurs are given and corporate leaders are given a lot of freedom outside of the laws and the regulation. Is saying if we want to legitimize all the freedom that we're giving them to create companies, to run companies, to be leaders of these companies, the only way to logically legitimize that freedom and power that we grant them in capitalist society is by the expectation that they would take into account more than just their interest or their owner's interest, but as he phrases it, the good of our entire society. So it comes to the definition of social responsibility, and I'm outlining it here because this is one of the first piece of writing where there's an actual definition. And he says the term social responsibilities of businessmen will be used frequently. It refers to the obligations of businessmen to pursue those policies, to make those decisions, or to follow those lines of action which are desirable in terms of the objectives and values of our society. So in Bowen's analysis, the social responsibility of businessmen is to find some kind of alignment between the decisions that they make, the policies that they defend, the consequences of their action, and the overall desirable desires of the objectives and values of our society. So they cannot defend their freedom and their decisions just for the sake of their company and the shareholders of the company, but because of the objectives and values of society. But then it leaves quite open the question to what are the objectives and values of societies. Bowen is very clear that here is only talking about capitalistic economic system and in a broader sense, democracies. So societies in which there is a certain mechanism, political mechanisms and economic mechanisms to express the objectives and the values of society. But as much as that book is a first statement about social responsibility in the corporate world, it leaves rather open how do we define these objectives and values of the broader society that businessmen are expected to align their interest with. It also doesn't give us a clear criteria to say, what if your own private economic interest in the company, financial profit, for example, profitability, for example, clash with the broader values of society? How do you arbitrate in between the two? And that's very much what the entire debate and thinking about corporate social responsibility is going to be about further down the line.